So, namaste, welcome to the Satsang Q&A. And if you're new to the channel, just to let you know that you're very welcome. Each month, try to get online and answer the questions that have been sent in. If you go to helenhamilton.org and click on the menu, there's a page called Satsang. And there's a form there where you can send in a question to be read out in these sessions. We'll record the answers and upload them. Try to do once a month, like this volume here. Questions are read out anonymously, so if you would like something addressed anonymously, you can use this feature. Or if you just simply can't make it live to a satsang, to ask me on the actual satsang. So I have Anish here to read these questions for me to help me. So whenever you're ready, Anish, we'll get started. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Helen. First question. Hello, Helen. My question is about converting word knowledge gathered through reading and listening into experiential knowledge. I know that I am a soul, not a body, the ultimate source and divine intelligence working through me, living a dream, and as a body, being a divine light, etc. And I trust in him. But how do I feel all this and merge into oneness? I meditate daily, see changes in life at various levels, getting insights and clarity. However, I'm thirsty for oneness. Can you help? With deep regards and pure love.
So if you're already thirsty for oneness, you don't want any separation between you and the beloved, then the first thing to realize is that the desire for that, to be living as that, not even to feel that I'm allowing the divine to express through me, where the me would be a separate self. The desire having already arisen for the oneness is evidence that it's emerging already. But of course, your question is like, how do we work with that consciously and speed it up? And the fastest and most direct and permanently effective thing that I've found is self-inquiry. So to even begin to experience that we are the infinite self already now, and that we don't even have to merge into it or become it or surrender to it, or even subtle thoughts of how do I embody this that I already am? How do I let this flow? All this will be eliminated in self-inquiry when we see this is what I already am. I already am. So I'd suggest having a look at the channel here on the playlists. There are some um, self-inquiry sessions that we've done. There's a self-inquiry playlist. There's also, we did some quite in-detail study sessions on self-inquiry, which have been uploaded to the YouTube channel as well. So have a look at those. The main idea behind self-inquiry, if you don't know already, is simply to want to see what you already are. That even this idea that I have to merge into this oneness. The desire for oneness is there because the belief in two-ness is still there. When the oneness, I am already this, already, and always was, when that's become so clear through repeatedly seeing who we already are in self-inquiry, even this most noble desire, this most auspicious desire for oneness will disappear because you'll be living as this. There'll be a realization deepening every day that this is what you've always been. You never were what you thought you were. So, highly auspicious desire, and perhaps the last burning desire we'll ever really have, and has to lead to fulfillment of that. Self-inquiry is the fastest way to work with that. So have a look at that stuff that I've recommended on the channel here. And if you need any help, just write back in. Have a go, try to apply what you hear in the videos. And most of all, the sincere desire to see what you already are is the most important thing. Thanks, Anish.
Next question. Dear Helen, I'm suffering so much over a challenge in my marriage. We have had a beautiful marriage for over 15 years and have two lovely kids. But 3 years ago, I got burnt out, and for over 2 years, nothing I tried worked to get better.
We've lost the sound there, Anish, somehow.
Out.
There we go. Could you just repeat that second, that after being burnt out? Somehow the sound just dropped out for a second. Thanks.
But 3 years ago, I got burnt out, and for over 2 years, nothing I tried worked to get better. It was obviously heavy for me, but for my wife too. A year ago, I found out that she was having an affair. It was the most painful experience I've ever had. She wanted to leave me for this man because I didn't make her happy anymore. She said she was surprised that she did something like this and that it was the other man's initiative. I decided not to break up or tell our children because I was hoping it wasn't going to last. We continued to live together, but it was very painful. After a few months, my wife told me that the man had broken up with her. I felt tremendous relief, but after some time, they started seeing each other again. A few weeks ago, it's apparently over again. My wife and I have lived together and even been intimate all through this time, but I can't trust her anymore. I still love her so much, but often I have this really angry monologue in my head where I tell her off and want to take revenge on the other man. I feel I should not be such a doormat. I often scream at my wife too. Because I am so hurt and angry and frustrated, my life has fallen apart in so many areas, and this was just too much. We had such a beautiful life, doing fun things together with our children, traveling. We were a team. I wonder why this is happening. At the moment, I'm being a really inferior and insecure version of myself. Can this relationship ever work? I don't want to break up or traumatize the children with a divorce. And my wife says she wants to continue. But I don't know if the affair will start again. How much should I try to fix this on the outside? I obviously can't control her, nor do I want to. I want to have a loving and caring relationship. What is the way forward here? I'm still very angry and hurt. Can I mend this from the inside? How could she be so disloyal all of a sudden? Why did life give her a lover and me a broken heart? I feel very inferior and like a total failure after all this. Was I wrong to let them go on? I feel I should do something to him to get my power back. It can make me so angry that he felt he could just use my wife like that. I don't like how this totally dictates my emotional state. It's so painful when my wife puts me down and glorifies the other man. I can't understand how this extremely painful situation is of any good. I used to make her so happy, and now she sometimes really hates me. My life was so beautiful, but now it's so ugly and painful. Sometimes I think it must be a curse. Where is the beautiful life I deserve? Thank you for your support. Best wishes.
So, I don't really want to dive into the actual situation there because that's not my purview. All I can advise you with is the spiritual aspects of it, and that any experience that we're having is reflecting some idea inside ourselves that has not been examined as yet, is still being believed to be true. And there's a couple of things that you've pointed to here in what you've said, where it's evidence of you doubting yourself or not trusting yourself, and invalidating yourself from when I was listening. So I'd like to be so bold as to say that you can't really know what the right way forward is in this area or any area of your life while you're still doubting yourself. And that is coming from a belief inside, perhaps the sense of unworthiness or shame inside. These beliefs need to be transcended first before you can really see what you want and what the right course of action is for you. That will naturally happen spontaneously. I'm noticing also as I was listening, this idea that you can choose what to do as a separate being here in this, whether to stay together or to split apart. That decision is not going to come from a separate being because it doesn't exist. You can't decide as a separate being here because that's not what you are. You are all the people involved in this. You are all of creation. The whole manifestation is your form. So I'd suggest looking at contemplation to really help with this. And again, on the YouTube video channel, there's a lot of videos and some study sessions we did on contemplation, how to work with an emotion, of which these experiences are a reflection of this emotion. You've asked how you can fix this inside, I think. So that would be my suggestion, looking at the emotions that you feel and seeing the belief underneath that emotion, and then questioning if that's really true. So you've mentioned a couple of emotions here. I would start with the strongest one, because only when you're seeing yourself clearly can you know the right path for you, the highest path for both of you. And while we're looking through some ideas about ourselves, looking at life ourselves through these ideas, we aren't really seeing clearly. We're distorting our perception of reality, like trying to look through some glass that's dirty and not clean. These beliefs, perhaps that we're not good enough, that we're not safe, keep reflecting back as emotions and experiences over and over again. And we try to solve the situation in the outer world, hoping that the emotion goes away, but it must be the other way around. It must be that I question the beliefs that these emotions are a reflection of. And then and only then can my outer world resolve itself with any sense of peace and clarity. So I don't want to give advice on some of the things you've mentioned here because it's just not where my skills lie. Um, Perhaps consider working together, talking together, maybe some getting some help, professional help, the two of you together, if that feels right to both of you, as in counseling or therapy. But spiritually speaking, that's where only place I can really help, and that's where I'd recommend contemplation here. Um, any therapy or counseling that you get to help you with this is not going to get in the way of your contemplation. It will be supportive of that process, helping you work through some emotions as well. So have a look at the contemplation videos. Start with the strongest emotion, not about I feel this way because of this situation. There's just this emotion sitting in the body. What does the emotion want to tell you? For me, fear said I'm not safe. Guilt said I don't feel good enough or there's something wrong with me. Shame, I don't deserve to exist. Anger, I can't get what I want. I feel blocked or limited. So have a look at those videos and, or if you're already accustomed to contemplation, it's perhaps just a call to look deeply at whichever emotion is the strongest here. Stay with that question for 30 days. You turn the belief into a question. So, is it really true I'm not safe for fear? And you stay with it for 5 or 10 minutes a day for 30 days, and you'll begin to see a big change happening. And transcending these beliefs doesn't mean getting rid of them, it means realizing that they never applied to you. You are the original self, as you always were, omnipresent and formless. And everything that's happening in our day-to-day experience is just reflecting anything that is in contradiction with that, nudging us to look and see that this isn't true for me and never was. So I hope that helps, but please write back in if you do need a little more help with that. Thanks, Anish.
Hello, Helen. Thank you so much for all that you share. I've benefited greatly from your perspective on finding and living from awareness. As I explore awareness, I find that I am much more able to experience awareness and oneness when I'm focused on things outside of my body. I find my body sensations make it much harder for me to notice oneness. Touch, taste, and other sensations like pain and feelings make my body feel very personal and separate from awareness. Observing a lamp, for example, feels so different from observing my body. What is the best way to deal with the personalness feeling of my body? Thank you.
It's very common, and sometimes, thoughts, emotions, we tend to find it more challenging than to look at an external object, as you've pointed to here. And it might be good to watch the study session here on the YouTube channel that we did on meditation, because in that there are a list of all the other doorways, as we're calling them, names for the oneness or awareness synonyms. So we've used things like subjectivity, contextual field, silence, stillness, consciousness, presence, awakeness. And for most of us, switching to a different doorway is helpful when we're looking at inner sensations. So for me, awareness, I could recognize there was awareness present of a thought, but when there was a strong emotion, I couldn't quite seem to feel that at first, to notice awareness. But there was a sense that of the knower, that's one of the other doorways, there's a knower. I know that this emotion is there, or I know that the pain I'm feeling is present. There's a knowingness that's present. So I suggest just looking through that video, or if you have the book that I wrote, Dissolving the Ego, they're also listed in there as well with explanations on each doorway. Again, they're just names for the same thing, the real self, the formless awareness, omnipresent self. But it all also, if we change the name that we're using, sometimes it gives a really different feel and an ease in certain situations. For me, the reason that all those 14 were there, because all 14 worked in different situations. In a busy airport, the contextual field suddenly seemed much more available than silence in that. Even though they are the same thing, the field is silence. The field is silent awareness. Or when there was a strong pain moving, sometimes the sense of stillness, the name stillness worked because the pain was shooting, moving fast, and that really contrasted well with the stillness. It seemed to move through the stillness and helped me recognize the stillness in which it was appearing. The other way is, and there's also some study sessions and videos on the YouTube channel here on self-inquiry. So in those moments when it feels harder to recognize the infinite awareness, you can really ask, is it true there's a separate person here? Is there someone? Can I find a person? This feels personal, but is it a person? Or, what is it that I do find when I look for myself, when you actually really look? So have a look at those, the meditation study sessions and the self-inquiry. See which one you feel pulled to more, or most, or both, and just give it a go. And most of all, the intention to overcome any sense of separation, and all separation is the most important thing, and you have that. We're just speeding up that process here, is all that we're doing. So, not blaming yourself that you can't find awareness rather so easily with an inner sensation. It's very normal. It was the same for me for quite some time. Um, but also not letting it stop you. Try a different doorway and see what happens. Thanks, Anish.
Dear Helen, I have been dealing with a big life decision. I decided not to move forward with it and feel so much regret, fear of staying in the same situation. that I've been in, etc. I seem to struggle with this a lot in my life, in many areas, where I difficulty making where I have difficulty making life decisions that creates enormous stress. The effect is I can't sleep and struggle with feelings of deep anxiety. Can you help me with this? I just feel really stuck and struggle to do the contemplation with this. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so it's very normal. But the real issue here is something different to what you think it is. And that's why you're having a challenge with this. The anxiety and everything and the sleeplessness is because you think you can make a decision. You think you can make a decision. Only a separate self, if there was one, a person, a separate entity, separate from me and everything else, would be able to make a decision if there was one. And I know that it feels like we're making decisions, but to really ask yourself, can I actually make a decision? It's going to be really informative. See if you can prove to yourself, and don't try it with a big decision. But let's say you want to decide whether to have tea or coffee, or you go into a cafe or somewhere and your friend asks you what you want to order. You think through the process and then you say that I would like a tea, please. Most of us would just accept that we made a decision at that time. Of course, we're talking about a very simple decision with no consequences here. Well, very small consequences. Can you prove you made a decision? So have a look at something. See if you can see it in action. If you look at the last decision you think you made, and here you've cited one of those, you'll see that what happened, if you really rewind it and go back in slow motion, there are a lot of thoughts. What should I do? I should do this. What if I do that? Is this the right thing to do? I think I'm going to do that. No, I shouldn't do that. What if I do? And it on and on and on and on and on. Let's say 1,000 thoughts from the time you knew this decision had to occur to when the decision occurred and in between. And then one final thought arose, this is what I'm going to do. And something claimed ownership of that decision thought. But can you find who made that decision? Can you find a person who made that decision? Shockingly, when I asked myself this, there was nothing there, no thing there making a decision. But the sense that I could make a decision, rather than the decisions just arising spontaneously, was being sustained by the idea that these 1,000 thoughts, or however many, all before, from this seemingly separate being, what should I do? What if I make the wrong decision? What is the right decision for me to make? It's all got this I, this separate I in it. Um, there's no evidence at all that any of these 1,000 thoughts actually led to this final decision thought. None. And yet all human beings believe that I must go through these 1,000 thoughts to get to this one final decision thought. When I really looked, when I really got interested, and when you can't sleep like this and you're anxious and everything, you'll be really interested in this, in debunking this, right? Can you find anyone that's generating this stream of thoughts? Can you find anyone who made this decision? Now, as scary as this might be for the mind, well, if I can't make a decision, who's going to run my life? Well, life's going to run your life. When there's no separate entity, when it's known that there is no separate self to make a decision, naturally the highest decision arises spontaneously, the one that works for everyone involved. The idea that I can make a decision as a separate being is what clouds are. Perspective diminishes our life force energy and stops us from sleeping. And even when a decision thought arises, it can't really be the highest one because it's been diminished by this separate sense of self, all the energy that's put into that. So if you really want to get out of this quick, see if you can find anyone that made that decision. I have never found a separate person, and I have looked thousands and thousands of times. I've seen many other people look and never find a separate person, only the consciousness in which a thought just spontaneously arises. This is what I'm going to do. But nobody made it happen. So really, really look and see. It might be shocking to find that you've never actually made a decision in the way that you think, but that means that what was going to happen was going to happen. So the more you realize you're not making decisions, the more decisions arise that you will really like and really like what comes from them because they're coming from the depths of the silence of who you are, the consciousness itself. And those kind of decisions just always make you feel good and lead to exactly what you want. These decisions that seem to come from someone with a lot of agony and stress tend to lead to more opportunities to see that no one's making decisions. So, hope that helps. Thanks, Anish.
Hello, dear Helen. This is not a quote, but from memory. You said in one of the videos, this feeling of helplessness and limitation is the essence of the separate self. Now, I understand in this human life context that younger and healthy people can do anything, but it is not but is it not kind of new agey and unrealistic to say that for people who are really helpless, like there's so many old and sick people or people with mental difficulty who cannot live without help of others? Thank you for your work.
Yeah, so what you're talking about here is the body of these beings, bodies that are old or older or dependent on other bodies for help. There's a sense of limitation there. But what I'm talking about is the being living inside these bodies, the one being. There's only one being experiencing itself as 8.5 billion human beings. And in most of those apparent human beings, this one being is believing itself to be separate to all of the other ones. It's convinced that it's a separate being. And with its conviction, if I'm certain that I'm separate to you, I'm going to feel small and limited in my beingness. So I could be the strongest person physically, the most have the most vitality, the greatest well-being. I could live for 500 years or something with the most amazing body that was a fountain of youth. But inside, I would still feel limited. I would still feel separate. I would still feel overwhelmed by an emotion when it arises, overpowered by someone else's energy coming towards me, or limited by not having enough resources. The moment I think I'm separate to everything else, I will feel that the things that I want and need are outside of me, separate to me. The money, the time, the relationships, everything, even the awakening itself is separate to me. And I will feel limited then, and I will feel that I need to get these things. That's the limitation I'm speaking about. The helplessness, as you said, is a pandemic of the separate sense of self. So just setting that aside to the actual bodies, the being who is experiencing life through all of these bodies will experience what it thinks about itself. If it knows itself to be the one being, omnipresent, formless, and indivisible, it will experience feeling unlimited and not finite, infinite. But if it thinks still that it's just one of many, many beings, billions and billions and billions of just human beings, and then all these countless animal, plant, and insect forms, and then all the other supposedly insentient forms, and then it will feel very, very limited, just a tiny, tiny being in a vast universe. Can you get a sense of it? I hope that helps. Please do write back in if it's totally not clear. Thank you.
Hello, Helen, and heartfelt thanks for what you bring. I heard you say in a recent satsang, Life Breaking Together, that you cannot be aware of awareness. For you, is that the same as being conscious of being conscious? Because my experience tells me I can be conscious of being conscious. Many thanks.
Yeah, it's um, common to all of us that we feel that we can be conscious of consciousness. And we might even use those words in a guided meditation, but when we're really ready to transcend our separation, which it sounds like you are here, um, because you're asking this really important question. If you really look, it will feel like there's a person being conscious of the consciousness, right? Or aware of the awareness. I'm using those words synonymously, consciousness and awareness. But can you prove it? That person who's being conscious of the consciousness, the separate being conscious of the great consciousness. Can you find it? Can you actually prove there's two in that moment? And my experience for a long time was of two-ness like this. You know, I can be aware of awareness or conscious of consciousness. But if you really look in the awareness itself, is there anything else? In the consciousness itself, is there a person in there? Inside the consciousness, being conscious of it, or outside, separate to it? Is there anything other than consciousness? When I really looked like this, I found that the person who thought it was being conscious of consciousness was just a feeling, a set of sensations and thoughts in the body. It didn't actually exist as an independent entity, separate to the consciousness itself, or separate to anything, in fact, any other being. It was a very well believed feeling or sense that I'm someone who's becoming conscious of the consciousness, the great consciousness. And we really have to examine that, really have to start to suspect that. And that's what's happening for you, right? That's where this question comes from. It really feels like there's two. But because you already are the consciousness itself, any idea that you subscribe to, you experience is very real. You are reality. So any idea that you look through, the reality takes the shape of that idea. And here the idea is that I'm looking at consciousness from the separate person. But is that really what's true? A real intense curiosity, desire to know, and this will start to break down. It already is, otherwise you wouldn't be asking this question. Really, there's just consciousness thinking itself to be a person, thinking itself to be an entity looking back at consciousness. And for me, a really helpful question for a while was, am I looking at or from the consciousness? If I'm looking at it, I'm looking from somewhere else as a person, right? But if I'm looking from the consciousness, I am that. Basically, it's just such a well-believed by all human beings idea that I'm a separate entity, but it really needs to be questioned now. See if you can find that person who's conscious of the consciousness. Might be quite surprised. Thanks, Anish.
Dear Helen, my heart deeply misses someone I was in relationship with, but who I had to cut out as he wasn't honest or faithful and was playing out toxic behaviors. Is it okay to fulfill that desire in my heart in imagination that it is different between us? I'm longing for that, but thought that would be an unhealthy thing to do. I was surprised by your relationship satsang, where you said that if one party has this desire, it's a shared desire. Is it not a projection that the other can reject? I have often loved people who could not fully reciprocate in the way I desired and was left in a loop of heartbreak and disappointment, feeling alone. I would love to heal this and fully share this love with others, a partner. I had learned in manifestation we are not meant to pin this love on a specific person, but often the desire is activated with a specific person, or that we should have no desires, wants. I hadn't known how to resolve this and end up feeling starved, empty, and sad as I want to share that love. I would love your thoughts and guidance on this. Many thanks for what you share.
So it's totally okay to use your imagination. We even work with conscious imagining in the community to help us imagine things like this. And you're right, yeah, I had said that the desire is shared. Um, so if I really want intimacy in a romantic relationship, the person I am with at that point must also want it. But as you said, so profoundly, how much they can let themselves receive that might be different to our own capacity. We might be quite willing to open up and share and explore what it means to be in a relationship. Perhaps the other person might not be able to yet, might still have some fears or doubts or inhibitions, sense of unworthiness. So the best way forward with this, you can absolutely dive into the imagining, as you said here, but to look at what you really want. You said you want to share this love. So from the highest place of awakening, can you share this love? Is there anyone else to share it with? Now, we don't really like to look at this because um, our mind says that if I admit there's no other being to fall in love with or be with or share this with, I'm going to end up alone for the rest of my life. I'll just be, living as a hermit on top of a mountain or something. But actually, it's completely the opposite. If I believe in other beings to share this love with, I'll keep finding other beings that either do or don't want me to share this love. Usually not in the way that I want them to be in a relationship. If I admit that through my self-inquiry and my meditation that I can't find any other being to share this with, there is just love, which is also another name for consciousness, awareness, presence, silence. Then anyone who's also deeply in love with love itself, who resonates on a very similar level to you, has the same interests and passions, perhaps, might even be on the pathway, deeply on the pathway to awakening themselves, will be brought into your experience. Someone with the same capacity for openness, um, same capacity to be vulnerable and to share and to open up. Basically, a better match or even a complete total match to what you really want. So what you want really is not a relationship. If you really look at it, what you want is to feel the way you feel or would feel in that perfect relationship. How would you feel if the right person came into your life right now? That's what you really want. When I asked myself that question, a whole set of feelings came, like I'd like to be deeply, a feeling of rich intimacy, a sense of oneness, a feeling of being completely and utterly loved and safe. And there was a whole list. So what do you want to feel if you had the perfect relationship now? And instead of going for sharing the love in a relationship, make your desire for how you want to feel, and then life can give you all the people that's going to match that. Without the sense of otherness, there is nothing more delicious in a romantic relationship than when the sense of two-ness has disappeared. We all experience that momentarily in a relationship. But to recognize, to start the relationship from not needing anything from each other because there's no sense of otherness. We're playing a relationship in these two bodies. There's a rich and deep and profound intimacy that can happen there, where the relationship nourishes and feeds both of you and actually adds to your spiritual growth rather than detracts from it. Where the relationship is a reflection of the oneness rather than a reflection of two-ness. The one being loves to play as relationships, but the highest place is to recognize there's nobody to share it with. Only then can we find that person who, whoever that is, and however we meet them, life will arrange it somehow, that shares that same love of love itself. Firstly, we want to receive love. Then, generally, later on the path, we want to give love. And then, towards the end, we want to give love unconditionally. And then, even later still, we want to be this love consciously. That's what you really want if you ask yourself to be an embodiment of love. And then all your relationships will reflect that, romantic included. Your heart is longing for something. What is it? It's a deep connection with your own self, the recognition that there is only one of us. And then let that so much love here that it just spills out. There's nowhere else for it to go. It just keeps on coming in abundance and spills out. And you'll have a relationship that is beyond anything you could imagine or beyond your wildest dreams. So I hope that helps and very good question.
Next question. I am permanently dreaming of my deceased wife as being a crazy person. In her life before her breast problem, she suffered from psychotic breaks. How do I see this madness that she had when she was alive, and that is now in my dreams? The question would be, am I mad? For her, I would say yes, because I left and I would leave my life again for her. But how to interpret this from the infinite being or the unique being? I'm trying to connect with her. Where is she? The exercise I do is to observe myself from consciousness and see if she is here. I ask the question, is it true that you are here now? And the question to you, Helen, would be, am I on the right track in this? Is there something I must learn to get there? I'm sure there is. What would I have to learn? Or is my situation crazy? Thank you, Helen.
Well, first of all, it's definitely not crazy. It's a good question. Um, and your the first part of your message was kind of asking, are you crazy? I think, and definitely not. This isn't craziness. This is love, isn't it? What I'm hearing is a very loving partner who has lost their partner and is feeling grief and a sincere wish to reconnect on a subtle level, which is absolutely possible. But any self-doubt or self-criticism that you're doing to yourself is going to diminish that capacity for connection. So, um, you mentioned that you would definitely leave your life again and do make the same choices you made before for this person that you have lost. And to me, that's a sincere and rich love emerging. And I would just like you to look at if you're criticizing or judging yourself in this. That's the first thing that we're going to have to let go of in order to be able to communicate with anyone effectively, whether they still have a physical body or not. All human beings are a little insane to some degree because the belief that we're separate beings is as opposite as it actually could be to what's true. So all of our thought process is distorted by this belief that we're a separate being. Our perception of reality, even what we're perceiving through the senses, is distorted by this belief in separation, in being a someone or a person. And so sometimes that distortion of reality becomes more prominent and more profound. And, there are a whole list of mental health diagnoses or labels that some professionals might put on that in the way that the perception of reality is distorted when it becomes very compounded. But coming from the awakening perspective, we can see how that might begin to occur. If I think I'm a separate being, then I'm going to try really hard to feel safe because I won't feel safe, to feel good enough because I won't feel good enough, to feel in control of my life because I really won't feel in control. And if I try and try and try and fail at all of those things long enough, sometimes that kind of fractures the mind. And we have mental health challenges, and there is so much of it going on all around the globe. Every country I've been to, people have told me the same thing. The real pandemic is this sense of separation, which leads us to criticize and judge ourselves. This is the thing that I'd really like you to look at in order to be able to establish clear communication. It's not obsession, right? It's just love and the recognition that love doesn't have to only be while you're in physical bodies. There is subtle realms and levels and layers that relationship can continue on. You've never been in love with this person's physical body anyway. Maybe one day they'll change the marriage vows from till death do us part to something else, but who knows? So have a look at where you're doubting yourself, criticizing yourself. See if you can let go of that. And then resend out the intention to connect again. Noticing any subtle signs, smells, memories, people saying something that your partner used to say, literally signs, going past on a truck, some wording or some number. And just start to trust those and ask for more. So I hope that helps. It's really any criticism, doubt, or self-judgment that's going to diminish your capacity to have this connection that you want. Thanks, Anish.
Hello, Helen. I am 36 years old, and 11 years ago, I had a great awakening to my true nature of unity that has not become permanent. So the last 11 years have been a very marked oscillation between that impersonal observer and the temporary emergence of a person with the resulting depression and emotional stress. I was always a very sensitive child, and my first 20 years of life were very traumatic: bullying, sexual abuse, family tension, etc. So I have even been given anti anxiety medication, which I take to this day. I've also been diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder. But the curious thing is that the symptoms disappear when the person disappears. And I recognize myself as the consciousness of unity that I am. I think that because there is so much repressed emotional material, my awakening has not yet stabilized. There seems to be an alternation for 11 years between impersonal, non dual consciousness and then the emergence of the person with very painful emotions that collapse the stress and stress on the physical body. Sometimes they are experienced as dark nights of the soul. Other times, they seem to be astral entities that attach themselves to me, my solar plexus. Others appear out of nowhere, as if they were emotions bubbling up from the unconscious and the stressing of my entire system. How do I know if it is vasanas, traumas, sensitivity, or spiritual emergency processes? And is there a way I can approach each one to speed up the process? I wouldn't want to spend the rest of my life oscillating and not taking advantage of it. The opportunity to permanently awaken now. I no longer have anxiety about the process. I'm totally committed to what has been years ago. I just don't want to waste the opportunity to permanently stabilize myself in my being in this life.
It's what you've described here is very common, and I hear it very, very often, and it mirrors a lot of what happened in my own life. And what the situation is that we come to see either through a moment of insight or deep self-inquiry or meditation that we are this non-dual consciousness, as you've called it. There is only one being. We're not a person, and we see that quite profoundly sometimes, maybe for quite a period of time. But then this sense of a person reemerges and seems to come to the forefront sometimes and then disappear again, and on it goes. So you've intuited here that there's some vasanas, you call them, or karmic patterns or beliefs, we could just call them, that are coming to the surface. When the person seems to reemerge, it's because there's a belief that needs to be seen that isn't true for the non-dual consciousness and never has been, but hasn't been investigated fully. Um, so we know that we're not the egoic sense of self, the separate sense of self, when we see who we really are. But that doesn't automatically mean that the egoic sense of self unravels itself. For most of us, myself included, and yourself here, we have to do investigation into these beliefs. That's why the book I wrote is called Dissolving the Ego, because it still might have its rigid thought structure intact even after a deep seeing of who we really are. There's a myth in awakening that a deep seeing of who we really are is enough to completely blast through all the thought process. That there's one big seeing, and then the mind kind of falls apart, the egoic sense of self falls apart. But we can ask these beliefs if they're really true through a contemplative process by asking the question, as the non-dual consciousness. So asking, even if I've seen who I really, really am, for me, these emotions and the situations they were reflecting as in my life became worse as I saw clearer, more prominent, and there was more of this oscillation, faster, to a point where it almost, came to a desperation. Dark night, as you said many times, over and over. So working with the emotion, what is the emotion that's the strongest emotion that's felt in those moments? There might be two or three big ones and some smaller ones. For me, it was fear, a lot of fear, constant fear, except for brief periods when the consciousness, the non-dual consciousness was obvious. Fear, anger, shame, guilt were the big ones, and fear was the most prominent. It was just constantly, felt constantly present. So I asked fear what it wanted to tell me, and it said, I'm not safe. And we could see the core of the ego in there, right? This entity, imagined entity that's tried so hard to get what it needs and wants and failed because it didn't really exist, although it was sure it did. I'm not safe, it said. So I questioned this, is it really true I'm not safe? And again, there are contemplation videos on this YouTube channel. Have a check of them and see. So just picking the emotions and then asking which the strongest emotion first, what it wants to tell you, the belief, turning that into a question, is it really true I'm not safe? Sticking with it for 5 to 10 minutes a day for 30 days in a row. Only that, 30 days in a row, is enough to rewire the neural pathways of the brain. Anything less than that. And it's like when we start to pull the weeds out by the roots in the garden, but then we leave some of the roots there. It's going to grow back again. So, having seen who we are, now we can ask these questions. Is this really true that I'm not safe? And it's going to be easier to see. Well, of course it's not true. We'd go through the process anyway for 30 days. Because you can feel that something inside us, this egoic sense of self, is still very much invested in this idea because it really feels true, or the sense that we're not good enough, or something like that, whatever way that's playing. So contemplation is the way. You've asked how to tell it's a vas if it's a vasana or a spiritual emergency. They are the same thing. These things are coming up now because they're so out of alignment with who you've seen yourself to be, that life is asking us to contemplate, to gently question, to gently challenge. Each time we question, is this really true? We're actually opening up the egoic structure, dissolving it from a hard ball of thoughts and associated emotions and energies into a soft, fluid thing that can actually begin to be a vehicle for the consciousness to express itself through and as I'm using my egoic sense of self right now to express myself this way. It becomes a software program rather than a hard, sticky ball of stuff. So it's very normal. But yes, you're right. You don't want to lose this opportunity, or else the very next body that comes, you'll have to do the same thing again. So now's a good time. So just picking the strongest emotion, asking it what it wants to tell you, turning that into a question for 30 days. And there are many videos on contemplation here on the channel just to help you out with that. Thank you, Anish. I think this is the last one.
Last question. I'm feeling a bit confused about awareness versus embodied awareness, which some spiritual teachers teach. If awareness is abstract attention, what is the point of paying attention to the body? If you are paying attention to something, such as the body, how can you stay open to the isness? I don't know if I'm resisting it because I have physical bodily issues and would prefer to let that go. Some teachers say that it helps heal the body to pay attention to it. What are your thoughts about paying attention to the body as awareness? Thank you.
Yeah, so it's a very good question. In my own experience, embodying the awareness or becoming, living as the awareness, I had to let go of all attempts to do that because from the awareness, I am already that. And so is the body, as you intuited. Um, and perhaps when we think still that we're separate beings, paying attention to the body and the illness is productive in terms of helping. But it's been my experience, and that with many others, that only permanent healing of the physical body can come from a permanent healing in the consciousness, the awareness, a recognition of who you really are, the awareness itself. And then as you notice, there's this intuitive sense that paying attention to the illnesses, the conditions, isn't really going to help the body heal. Because if I'm looking at an object like the body, I have to believe myself to be an object. And the awareness is not an object. The awareness is appearing as the body and the illness. So paying attention to it from here now might be counterproductive, actually even make things seem worse. And I don't mean, of course, that we don't take care of the body. Of course we do. But when you say paying attention to the body and the conditions, what we really mean is paying attention to the thoughts about the conditions and the symptoms, which is absolutely going to make it seem worse. The best way to work with this then is to rest as awareness completely, as often as you can, just being the awareness consciously. If you struggle to do that, of course, which a lot of us do, at some points where there's a strong pain or something going on with the body, then looking at the emotion that arises, what's going on in the body is a reflection of an emotion that we haven't been able to feel. And their emotion is a reflection of a belief that we're still agreeing with. So if you look back at the previous answer I just gave to the previous question, it will also help you with this. And if you can't find an emotion, it's really simply because we don't really want to feel it. And that's why the body's having to tell us with a physical condition. You can also get a sense of what the emotion is by checking out Louise Hay's work, the list of beliefs that come with physical symptoms and conditions. And And although I'm not suggesting that you do the affirmations because you've moved beyond that level now as recognizing yourself to be awareness, but it can give you a hint. So for me, I had a lot of problems with my shoulders and things. And that was, according to Louise Hay, a lot of anger, suppressed anger, which really helped me to get in touch with, okay, what does anger say? And it's a belief in I can't get what I want, being blocked, limited. So staying as the awareness is always the most direct way. In that, the reason that the mind resists that is because it says that if I just rest as the awareness, the infinite awareness, nothing's going to get fixed in the body. The body's condition is not going to get any better. But actually, it's the opposite, right? As you've probably intuited. Somehow, if I can just rest as my essential nature, my body doesn't have to experience the emotion which is coming from the belief. And the belief will become much more obvious, and you can see from awareness this belief isn't true. You can also use contemplation to help move beyond those beliefs. And again, there's plenty of videos on the channel here for that. The bottom line is that the body has to tell us something physically to show us there's something to look at. If there's some emotion that we really haven't wanted to feel, and of course we haven't wanted to feel the emotions as an apparent separate person. And those emotions are telling us a belief that we're still buying into, giving a lot of credence to on the level of the separate sense of self. And when we look at those beliefs, we can begin to see they never were true for us, the awareness. And we couldn't resolve them till now because we thought we were that separate person. Letting go of these beliefs when we think we are a separate person is like letting go of ourselves, and it's terrifying. But from the infinite self, the awareness, it's clear that these have never been true for me. I've never been unworthy. I've never been unsafe. I've never been limited. And there's nothing that could block me. So, um, gently respecting the body, but not paying attention to the thoughts about what's going on with the body. That'll be where what you're intuitively feeling to move away from. Of course, taking care of the body, physical, of course, modern day medicine and any other ways that you can help the body if you need to, but not perpetuating the thoughts about the health conditions is the best way. Awareness, uh, when we rest as awareness, we don't waste any life force energy believing thoughts. And that excessive life force energy that's suddenly available, we're not running on empty all the time. The body can heal itself. And it's quite a beautiful process. So I hope that helps, but please do write back in if you need more help with that. So that brings us to the end of our questions that we have today. Thank you so much, Anish, for reading for me. Really, really appreciate it. And if you do have a question, just to remind you, they're read anonymously here. You can go to helenhamilton.org, the Satsang page, and there's a form there that you can fill in. Please try to keep your questions concise and to the point, and don't share anything in there that you don't want read out. It's just might be obvious, but just saying anyway. So, we'll try to get together once a month and go through these questions. Thank you so very much. Namaste.